Evo, ponovit ću svima još pozdrav, dakle svih vas lijepo pozdravljam. Zadovoljstvo mi je pozdraviti vas u ime organizatora današnjeg događanja, poslovnog kluba Partneri i pokrovitelja veleučilišta Par i generalnog konzulata Italije u Rijeci. Posebno pozdravljam gospodina Borisa Popovića, predsjednika organizacijskog odbora današnjeg događanja i predsjednika udruge Poslovni klub Partneri. Naravno, gradonačelnika grada Rijeke, gospodina Marka Filipovića, kao i generalnog konzula Italije u Rijeci, gospodina Davida Bradaninija. A naravno, s posebnim zadovoljstvom pozdravljam našeg uvaženog gosta, gospodina Ricarda Illija, i zahvaljujem što se odazvao ovom pozivu, te mu u ime organizatora i pokrovitelja želim srdačnu dobrodošlicu u Rijeku. Pa, gospodo, pozdravimo naše goste. Evo, čast mi je u ime veleučilišta Par, jednog od pokrovitelja današnjeg događanja, i dekanice Gordane Nikolić pozdraviti sve prisutne. Predavanjem gospodina Illija pod nazivom Preobrazba grada u boljeg sebe, primjer Trsta, želi se na primjeru grada koji je u našoj neposrednoj blizini i nama svima u stvari tako blizak, ukazati na sve mogućnosti koje su dostupne i primjenjive za transformaciju grada Rijeke i regije, odnosno upravo na primjerima dobre prakse dobiti motivaciju i poticaj za daljnji razvoj Rijeke, ali i pridonijeti umrežavanju ovih dvaju gradova. Pozivam sada gospodina Borisa Popovića, predsjednika udruge Poslovni klub Partneri, da se obrati nazočnima. Izvolite. Evo ga. Evo mikrofona, pa izvolite.
Hvala. Zahvaljujem se svima i pozdravljam vas sve. Malo nas je broj iznenadio, ali ovako smo malo svi zajedno bliži i intimni. Posebno bih se zahvalio gospodinu Illiju koji je svoje dragocjeno vrijeme posvetio nama i došao u Rijeku da bi nam dao svoje dragocjeno iskustvo i podijelio sa nama stvarno bogato iskustvo i bogata znanja iz njegovog širokog dijapazona djelovanja, znači i političkog i gospodarskog i kulturnog, tako da stvarno jedna osoba od koje možemo puno naučiti. Zahvalio bi se također generalnom konzulatu Republike Italije, zahvalio bi se poslovnoj školi Par, zahvalio bi se gradonačelniku i svima vama ponovno koji ste došli ovdje. Posebna zahvala curama koje su ovo organizirale, znači Mirjani, Marini, Ljubici i cijelom tehničkom timu. Ono što je možda zanimljivo, što bi ja trebao reći, to je nešto o poslovnom klubu. Do ove ideje je došlo jednom brainstormingu poslovnog kluba Partneri, gdje smo mi razmišljali o budućnosti poslovnog kluba. I onda smo rekli, jedna od naših aktivnosti treba biti neke atraktivne tribine gdje ćemo mi privlačiti ljude koji su zanimljivi široj javnosti, koji nam mogu donesti neke nove ideje, neke svježe ideje koje mi možemo možda primijeniti u našem okruženju. Znači, poslovni klub Partneri, uvijek kažem da je majka poslovnog kluba Partneri EPK 2020, a otac se Riječki val, udruga građana. I spojem, znači, tih vrijednosti koje smo preuzeli od EPK 2020, a to su otvorenost, različitost, tolerantnost i neke odrednice naše vizije poslovnog kluba, a to su znači kultura, poduzetništvo, suradnja, filantropija. Na osnovu toga smo mi nastavili naše djelovanje. Jedan od razloga zašto smo vas ovdje okupili, tako da nam se pridružite, da nas ima više i da tu kulturu dijeljenja i suradnje, povezivanja, da pokušamo malo širiti i da promijenimo naš mindset u Rijeci od ne može se u može se. Jer kod nas je uvijek sve ne može se. Neko je drugi kriv i ne može se. Sjećam se naše prve tribine. Ova, u stvari, tribina je treća tribina na sličnu temu. Prva tribina koju je organizirao, prvu i drugu su organizirali Riječki val. Prva je bila Rijeka izlazi iz prosječnosti, a druga je bila Rijeka može li bolje. A ova treća je Preobrazba grada i primjer Trsta. Znači, u prvoj je bila analiza, u drugoj je bila usporedba sa Zadrom i Pulom, a ova treća nam je jedan pozitivan primjer kako se može napraviti puno kad se hoće i kad se zna. Evo, ja vas sve pozivam da se priključite. Zaboravio sam reći, poslovni klub Partneri u ovih 5 godina djelovanja je prikupio više od 100.000 eura sredstava i realizirao više od 27 projekata. raznih projekata u kulturi. Znači, filantropija je jedna od naših glavnih djelatnosti, ali ne samo filantropija. Znači, povezivanje i suradnja je nešto što mi želimo poticati. Hvala vam.
Hvala vam, tako je, hvala vam najljepša. Evo, hvala još jednom gospodinu Borisu Popoviću, a sve prisutne pozdravit će i naš gradonačelnik, gospodin Marko Filipović. Izvolite.
Evo, srdačan pozdrav svim prisutnima, posebno gospodinu Iliju. Hvala na pozivu, na ovo večerašnje predavanje. Ja se nadam i uvjeren sam da jako puno toga možemo naučiti od Trsta i nemjerljivo je iskustvo gospodina Ilija koji je naravno prepoznat prije svega kao poduzetnik, a onda i kao političar koji je djelovao i na, ajmo reći, lokalnom nivou kao gradonačelnik Trsta, zatim kao predsjednik Friuli Venecije Đulije, pokrajine talijanske, ali isto tako i kao zastupnik u talijanskom parlamentu, tako da ima, rekao bih, ovo iskustvo i sa lokalnog, i sa regionalnog, i sa nacionalnog nivoa i jako dobro može posvjedočiti kako je u stvari bavljenje politikom, a naročito na ovom lokalnom nivou, jedan izazovan posao, jer jako je teško uklopiti sve interese i sva društvene tokove u strateške dokumente. To nastojimo činiti u Rijeci kroz suradnju i sa sveučilištem, sa svima vama kao akterima i civilnog društva, ali i poduzetnika prije svega, jer poslovni klub Partneri, kao što je gospodin Popović istaknuo, proizašao je iz Europske prijestolnice kulture i iz Riječkog vala i zaista doprinos poduzetnika razvoju grada Rijeke je nemjerljiv, a oni okupljeni u poslovnom klubu su zaista oni koji promišljaju i šire od samoga poduzetništva, a svjedoči o tome i iznosi koji su prikupljeni i uloženi u vrlo zanimljive projekte na dobrobit naše zajednice. Puno je toga što nas povezuje Rijeku i Trst. Rekao bih da puno više imamo zajedničke povijesti i onoga što nas povezuje kroz državno-pravna uređenja kroz koja smo prolazili, nekada zajedno, nekada na nekim drugim stranama, tako da ta naša povijest je turbulentna, ali mislim da iz nje dosta toga možemo naučiti i iskoristiti to u budućnosti za dobrobit prije svega našega grada i neka vaša iskustva, jer mislim da uvijek kada govorimo o nekakvim transformacijama i često slušamo o puno većim gradovima, mislim da je Trsta upravo pravi primjer, 68 km od Rijeke, da ne kažem da nas puno toga i geografski i luka, naravno, koja je tu prije svega poveznica između Rijeke i Trsta povezuje. Nekako moje promišljanje uvijek ide ka tome da se moramo još više povezati, ne samo kroz suradnju luka, nego i suradnju gradova i na kulturnom i na sportskom i na svim drugim planovima, a prvenstveno na ovoj poveznici i cestovnoj, za što je Schengen i euro dobar temelj, a na nama je da iskoristimo sve benefite koje nam Europska unija kao zajednica u kojoj Hrvatska i Italija djeluju na tom putu pomogne. Evo, da više ne duljim i ne dužimam vaše dragocjeno vrijeme, još jedanput dobrodošli u Rijeku.
Hvala. Hvala gradonačelniku Marku Filipoviću, a pozivam sada konzula Italije u Rijeci, generalnog konzula Italije u Rijeci, Davida Bradaninija, da se obrati nazočnima, pa izvolite.
Hvala, grazie, gentile sindaco di Fiume, gentili autorità. Sono davvero lieto di vedere così tante persone, così tanto interesse per questa nostra serata. Permettetemi innanzitutto di ringraziare e salutare il nostro gradito ospite dall'Italia, Ricardo Illy. Grazie per essere qui con noi questa sera. Questo evento organizzato insieme ai nostri partner e l'Università Par, che vorrei ringraziare sentitamente per aver coinvolto anche il Consolato Generale. Tanto interesse perché parliamo delle nostre sfide comuni, delle sfide che ci accomunano Italia e Croazia, accomunano queste due città, Fiume e Trieste, Rijeka e Trst, due città accomunate da geografia, storia, cultura, vicinanza umana e tante tante collaborazioni e tante realtà che si vivono insieme tutti i giorni, ma anche dalle sfide di un mondo che sta cambiando. E lo viviamo quotidianamente. Io vivo qui, conosco bene anche Trieste, l'Italia, le sfide di un'economia in trasformazione, di una società in trasformazione, quindi le sfide che accomunano tutto il nostro continente, la digitalizzazione, la ricerca di una nuova identità cittadina e un'identità all'interno di un'identità nazionale, ma anche le sfide di città di mare, quindi città di porto, città che vivono intensamente i problemi e le sfide del trasporto, dell'interconnettività e della industrializzazione o nuova industrializzazione. Ecco, quindi sono molto felice che avremo presto tutti insieme l'occasione di ascoltare le parole di chi ha gestito in prima persona la trasformazione di una città così simile a questa città di Fiume. I rapporti fra Italia e Croazia sono particolarmente intensi fra queste due realtà, fra il territorio di Fiume, la regione litorale montana, e il Friuli Venezia Giulia. Come sapete, l'Italia è primo partner commerciale della Croazia e lo è a maggior ragione di questi territori. Quindi quando parliamo delle nostre sfide comuni, parliamo anche delle soluzioni che insieme possiamo identificare, trovare e costruire insieme. Vi ringrazio nuovamente per la vostra presenza e vi auguro buona serata. Grazie.
Hvala generalnom konzulu Bradaniniju, a došao je trenutak zbog kojeg smo se svi okupili večeras. Slijedi nam naravno predavanje Preobrazba grada u boljeg sebe, primjer Trsta, kojeg će nam održati gospodin Ricardo Illy, kojeg sada pozivam da dođe. Izvolite, prego.
Hvala. Hvala lijepa. Good evening, everybody. I will talk in English because I'm pretty sure that all of you understand English and maybe not exactly all of you understands Italian. So, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure being again in Rijeka. I have been here quite a lot of times when I used to be the mayor and then when I was the president of the region Friuli Venezia Giulia. So I always had very good relationships and we were cooperating with the mayor of Rijeka and with the governor of this region. I will start telling you something about my personal history, let's say my biography, and then telling you something more about the experience I had as a mayor of Trieste for 2 mandates between 1993 and 2001. So I was born in 1955. I followed the high school and then decided to leave my home. I married at 19 years and we had a daughter when I was 22. So I started working immediately at the age of 19. I made quite a lot of activities from porter to clerk. I've been sail instructor, then ski instructor, and finally I got some money because previously all the work I did weren't paid so well. And finally in 1977, my father proposed me an interesting job at Illy Cafe. So I started in sales, then I developed marketing, and I worked there for about 15 years. And by chance, I got aware some month ago that all the phases of my life lasted about 15 years. And I have been also in politics for 15 years, between 1993 and 2008. So at Illy Cafe, I started, as I said, in sales and in marketing. And first of all, I studied the books of Peter Drucker. He was Austrian of origins, but left his country when the Second World War started, went to the United States, and he was professor for his whole life at Harvard. And he invented the principles of management. And his most well-known book is titled Management. And he was really a man able to look forward and to, I would say, invent the future. You can imagine that about 8 years ago, he already wrote about the necessity for the company to respect the environment, to satisfy all the stakeholders of the company. And by the way, he wrote not about companies, but about organizations. So his idea was that a private company or a non-profit organization or even a public entity has the same objective, which is to satisfy the needs of the people and uses the same resources, human, first of all, financial, and knowledge. And then, of course, also material, but this can just be bought with the financial resources. And Peter Drucker, talking about the companies, wrote that the profits are the cost of the future. So he said, each organization, companies, but also public entities, and also the association are competing with other organizations. And to compete, you have to innovate. But to innovate, you need some money. And the money comes first from profits. So that's the meaning of profit as cost of the future. And talking about the human resources, Peter Drucker, I say it again, about 8 years ago, wrote that the scope of each organization should be to facilitate the self-fulfilling of its employees. It's great. And he was writing, he was adding, it is not something you do for mercy. You do it because it is in your interest as an organization. Because if your employees will be satisfied, they will work much better and you will get much better results. So it was following these principles that when a group of citizens came to me in the fall of 1993, asking me to candidate as mayor, I said, Mr. Drucker wrote that we have as an organization, so also as a company, to satisfy all our stakeholders. And these are, first of all, the consumers, then the employees, then the supplier, but then also the local environment where the company is working, where it was born and where it grew. And so with the other members of the family, I have 2 brothers and 1 sister. At that time also my father was alive, my mother is still alive, so the whole family had a meeting. And I asked, what do you think? Should I accept to become a candidate for mayor, the first direct election of a mayor in Trieste? And if elected, I would become the youngest mayor of the city because I was only 38 at that time. And so talking with the other members of the family, the idea was the territory where the company was born in 1933 and the territory that gave so much to the company, human resources, financial resources through the local banks, knowledge resources through the university and the scientific institution that are based on Trieste. So if now the territory asks something back, we have to say yes. At that time, my father was still very active, and I would say effective and efficient. And my youngest brother was already working at Illy Cafe for 3 or 4 years. So we said we can rent 1 member of the family for, I thought, a short time. I thought 1 mandate, so 4 years to the city. So finally, with a negative vote of my wife. She was aware that she was going to lose her personal and private life, and my sister that wanted to protect myself from the bad guys of the politics, but with the majority of positive votes, we decided to accept. So then I had to look to some parties or movement to sustain me. And I said, I will accept with, let's say, a project or a program for the city that was drawn by this group of citizens. I will accept to accomplish this program, this sustain of all parties and movement that won't pose any exclusion and won't pose any, let's say, constraint. Finally, remained a group of parties that went from the still existing Democrazia Cristiana. You probably not the youngest people, but the less young have for sure not heard about Democrazia Cristiana, to the, let's say, Socialist Party. The Rifondazione Comunista, so the new Communist Party, decided to remain at the opposition, because they understood perfectly that if joining the majority, they would, let's say, impede to me to win the election. Because in Trieste, you have about 2/3 of the population that normally votes to the center-right. And I was sustained by a center-left coalition. So the parties and movement that finally decided to give me their sustain got about 25% of the votes. So it was a tough challenge, let's say, to win the election. Any case, in Italy, we have the two-term system. We have the first election and then the ballotage if nobody goes over 50% at the first election. I went to the ballotage and I won the election with about 22% of the votes. Then I started to accomplish the program, starting from the, let's say, very synthetic program that a group of citizens had written. I developed a much more detailed program. And before the election, I asked all the parties and movement to sign it, because I said this will be the agreement between us. And the law, the Italian law that had been just approved for the direct election of the mayors, said that the eldermen, we call them assessori, so the members of the board of the executive of the municipality, the eldermen, were appointed by the mayor. And so I said, our agreement is that I will use this power. So I am independent as a candidate mayor and then as a mayor. So I never belong to any party or movement. And I will have the freedom of appointing also all of the eldermen independent as me. And the party said, okay, we are in agreement. So after the election, I started looking for the eldermen. Not easy, because I was asking at that time 50% of the working time. And after some months, I said 50% is not sufficient, so we need 100%. And so it became tougher and tougher. And I appointed at the beginning 8 eldermen, all of them independent and all professional. I had 4 professors, university professors. One was in literature, another was in architecture, engineering. The third one was in social services, and the fourth one was in economy. And then I had ex-managers. In one case, it was a manager of the public administration working in the healthcare sector. And he had the possibility to take some years of free time without losing his job. And so finally I had eight guys. And a few days after my election, the Secretary General of the municipality that I found there, and that at that time was appointed by the Minister for Interior in Italy. Only some years ago they changed the law, and they decided that the mayor could appoint by himself the Secretary General. So this Secretary General came to me saying, you know, I have the right age, so I decided to retire. It was December 1993. And I said, okay, I understand, but when will you retire? This January the 1st, so few days later. So this was, in one hand, a bad, a huge problem, but a bad news, but in the other hand, a good one, because I remember that a member of the parliament used to be the mayor of Muggia, in the other, let's say, the second largest city in the province of Trieste. And we were good friends, so I called him asking, do you have maybe another name of a good Secretary General? The one that I found was more a bureaucrat than a manager, by the way. And he said, yes, I know one excellent. He is now the Secretary General of the province of Gorizia. He is living in Monfalcone, which is a few kilometers from Trieste. So I called him. He came visiting me, and he said, yes, I would like so much to become the Secretary General of Trieste, but I applied twice to become. Each time I arrived at the second position. The first one accepted, and after 2 or 3 weeks left the municipality. So it would be the third time, and I would like not to risk. Any case, finally he accepted. And I have to say he was really a great manager, but also a Secretary General, so he knew very well the law. And he helped not only me, but the whole board very much. And after a few months, when he saw how many things we were wanting to do, he suggested, you know, I am now the guy that looks at all the juridical aspect of your decision, but I am also the general manager. I cannot do the two tasks well. So you should appoint a general manager. I said, but no other municipality has a general manager, so maybe it's forbidden. No, she said, it is not forbidden, so that means you can do it. And so I was the first mayor appointing a general manager. But I also asked him, maybe you also have a person to suggest. And he said, yes, you guessed. You organized some courses for the managers, and one professor of the University Bocconi of Milan impressioned me for his capability. I think he would be the right general manager. Okay, Andrea Viero is his name. So I called him, he came, he said, okay, we'll accept. His family is a family of entrepreneurs, so he also have a let's say, managerial approach. And he became the general manager. And after some more weeks, the Secretary General said, I think you also need a consultant, because you have so many big problems, like the steel company that now closed, but at that time was in crisis, Ferriera di Servola. You have a cruise line that is going to be privatized, or if they are not able to privatize, to close. You have Fincantieri building ships that doesn't want anymore to manage a big area called Arsenale San Marco. You have Grandi Motori Trieste, which is the company building the big engines for ships and power production. And all these companies are in crisis. So if all of them close, you are in big troubles. So you better appoint a consultant. that will support the board in finding the buyers and to then attract new companies. And so I went to Rome, and the manager of a small group, a task that should support the areas of the country that were in crisis, suggested me to appoint an engineer called Giovanni Gambardella. He passed away a few months ago. And he used to be the CEO of the national steel company Ilva. So he perfectly knew the steel sector, but also the other. And with his support and the support of the general manager, we did quite a lot of things. But before starting working, my question was, how can I apply what I learned as a manager in the private company also to the municipality? And the starting point was, first of all, I have to draw a strategy. I have to establish some objectives. And then the single decision will come as a consequence of the strategy and the objectives. So what I asked myself was, which are the competitive advantages of the city? I studied the most important author regarding strategies, which is Michael Porter. I read all his books. By the way, he wrote also a book for public administration, for government. And so I thought a little bit, and I finally decided we have in the city 3 competitive advantages. The first is the geopolitical position. We are the harbor on the Adriatic Sea, more northern in the sea. So we are the closest harbor to Austria, to Switzerland, to Germany in the Mediterranean Sea, or especially in the Adriatic Sea. And also for serving the Czech Republic, Hungary, why not Ukraine? We are the best harbor. This is the first competitive advantage. Second, the presence of lot of scientific institutions. We were the first city where the Italian government decided to establish an area science park. We have the International Institute for Theoretical Physics. We have a post-laureate school, so post-university, where you give the doctorate, and it's one of the 4, if I remember well, in Italy. And all these institutions, we have the synchrotron machine that has been inaugurated after 1 year that I was appointed mayor of the city. So a high concentration of scientists. And this is the second competitive advantage. And the third one are the beauties of the city, archaeological, artistic, cultural, also the natural beauties, the sea and the karst. So with these 3 competitive advantages, we thought we can develop 3 economic sectors. With the geopolitical position, sea traffics, first of all, with the scientific institution, manufacturing, but let's say innovative manufacturing, and with the beauties of the city, tourism. That at that time almost didn't exist. When we talk about tourism, it was in reality, I say, auto-tourism. So we were talking about the citizens of Trieste that were going on Sunday on the karst, maybe for eating something and to walk on the karst. And so we made a program and we started working to develop the 3 objectives that were to develop sea traffics, new manufacturing companies, of course, to save the ones that were under threat in this moment, and also to develop a new, brand new sector that was tourism. And let's say the broad objective was to improve the quality of life of the citizens. And we were perfectly aware that we were also in competition with other municipalities, because this should be, not always is, but should be the objective of each public administration, to improve the quality of life of its citizens. So if we wanted to attract a new company, we knew that also, I don't know, Monfalcone or Udine or other municipalities, why not also in Slovenia, were competing to get this company invest in their territory. But we also knew that we needed the cooperation with the other municipalities and with the other territories. And that's the reason I started almost immediately, let's say, in January, February, visiting almost all the surrounding municipalities. And when I went to Udine, which is one of the main cities of the region, I discovered, because the Secretary General, when he arrived for the accueil, told me, it's 70 years that mayor of Trieste doesn't pay a visit to the municipality of Udine, 70 years. And when I went to Ljubljana, it was quite similar. I don't know when I came to Rijeka, but probably maybe not 70 years, but 30 for sure. So we started competing in the proper way, but also cooperating with the other municipalities. But after deciding the strategy and after fixing the objective, one other point was lacking. I learned in the previous year a said, which is, let's say, given to Abraham Lincoln. And he said, if I had 4 hours to cut a tree, I would spend the first 3 hours to sharpen the axe. And what does it mean in a municipality? To improve the organization. So becoming mayor, I found for a general manager or a secretary general to manage 36 people. Impossible. So we reduced the number of managers of the first level to 12. 12 you can do, especially now with the digital system. In the organization, the magic number is 7, plus or minus 2. So the maximum number should be 9. But this was written when the digital technology didn't exist. Now, digitalization helps a lot, also managing other people. So we reduced from 36 to 12. We made a first reorganization, and then with the support of the general manager, a second reorganization. Then you also have to organize the spaces in the city, the territory. So we made a new city plan and we approved it. Then, unfortunately, it wasn't approved by the final authorities. And so we had to approve a second one. So in 8 years, we made twice the city plan. But this allows you to understand where you need to build factories, and where you need to build houses, and where you need parks and public services and so on. So it's vital to have the right city plan. And the time changes, and also the need changes over time. So you need to adapt periodically the city plan. Can be the same for the one we found had, if I remember well, 40 years. So it was absolutely too old. then we understood that to guarantee good development, economic development in the city, we needed to be well connected to the city. And the first thing, we had the highway connecting the city and the port, the harbor, to the network of highways at the European level that lacked about 5 kilometers to be completed. And after a few weeks, we got a letter of the national company managing all the roads and the highways in Italy, called ANAS, saying you can throw away the project that you presented because it doesn't respect the last laws. So you made a curve 180 degrees on basis of about 60 meters. So you can imagine what happened if one car or a truck would fall down from 60 meters. And the dimension of this curve is not fit to the new law. So you have to change it completely. And by the way, this project would completely destroy a small village, very, very nice, tiny, but very nice. So we started with a new trace for the road, for the highway, a new project. Finally, it took for myself in 2 mandates. I completed the project, all the authorization, and we were managing, let's say, the procedure to give the works to the final company, to the construction company. So 8 years, and then additional 7 were needed to complete the works. And we didn't lose even one week. And I think that also my successor, who is still, or is again, the mayor of Trieste, didn't lose any week to complete the highway. But finally, we got it. Then there were railways. And then there was the airport. And so I thought we proposed the national government to sign an agreement where we define all the projects, all the activity that are needed by the city, but that depends by the states or by the region. So we prepared the text with the support of the consultant I mentioned before, Giovanni Gambardella, and the state and the region decided to sign the agreement. And after a few months, for example, we were able to deliver the trucks that were arriving with the ferry boats from Turkey and Greece with a train, because previously there were 2 tunnels that didn't allow, because they were built in 1850 by the Austro-Hungarian Empire, so they didn't allow the train to pass with a truck over the wagon. And so we changed the shape of the tunnel, and now there are thousands of trucks that are going by rail to Austria, to Bavaria, to Switzerland, to Italy, of course. And so we had a long list. I want to mention all the works we did thanks to the agreement. But I mentioned the agreement to say, when you are in charge, you are the leader of a public administration or also in a private organization, you have 2 aspects. In one hand, you have the competence, you have the power to decide, because the municipality, for example, can establish new nurseries, new kindergarten, or can establish new services, or can refurbish a place, or refurbish a street, and so on. But there are other, let's say, activities that are needed to improve the quality of a municipality that are not in the competence. But in this case, I call it influence. You can influence other entities to do what you need, and it is in their competence. So following these principles, In one hand, we used all our competences, but in the other hand, I personally used my influence to convince other entities, even the national government, to sign agreement and then accomplish what was needed for Trieste. Of course, saying if Trieste is doing well, it will help also the whole region and the whole country doing better. And I would say it worked. One of the fields of influence is education, because in Italy, only the lowest level of education are in competence of the municipalities. To be precise, kindergarten, and then what we call scuole materne, which is the second level. But from the elementary school to the university and post-university to the doctorate, the competence is of the state. So we had no power toward the universities, but I could use my influence. And so I was always a good friend of the rector, also the rector, which is now at the University of Trieste, Roberto Di Lenarda, is a good friend of mine, even if I have no, no public task anymore. And so I cooperate with the university. In one hand, asking, for example, I said, we need a faculty of architecture. We have engineering, but we also need architects. And finally, the rector said, you are right, and he organized a course that was based in Gorizia instead of Trieste, but doesn't matter. In the territory, we finally had also a faculty of architecture. The closest otherwise was in Venice, which is quite well known, top quality, but we also needed our own faculty of architecture. But of course, we also gave back something to the university. For example, the rector said, you know, the public transportation is not fit to the needs of the students. Okay, so we changed. By the way, also in this case, we reorganized the company, Trieste Trasporti, where the main shareholder is the municipality of Trieste, but then minority shareholders, the other 5 commons. We let a minority private shareholder enter the company, and we made a very simple agreement. We have the juridical control of the company as public administration. You as private shareholder, minority shareholder, will have the management. So we appoint the president, he controls, he guarantees that the public services are of good quality and at the right prices. And you, as a private company, will manage at best the company. I made this agreement more than 20 years ago, and it is still working. So we improved the public transportation for the students, but this is only an example. Another, when we got the European funds of the program Urban 2, we restructured the part of the city called Civitavecchia. It's, let's say, behind the city hall or under the San Giusto hill, and it was a whole area completely closed, almost destroyed, ruins. And we got quite a lot of millions of euros, and we completely restructured the area. And several buildings were given the university for housing of the students. Because one of the problems of the Italian universities is that the number of beds for students coming from other cities are always too low. And so we supported the university in this way, but it's only an example. Time is right, almost over. I didn't see anyone sleeping, so maybe I can continue. Only few minutes. But then I can imagine that you will have some questions, so I want to leave some room for question and answer. But what is still important? What we did for companies. So I told you our objective was to improve the quality of life of the citizens. How to do it? Mainly letting grow, so facilitating the incorporation of new companies, attracting companies from other territories, and facilitating the growth of companies. But I would add, not whatever the company, but possibly companies that employ people with a high level of knowledge. People that are, let's say, with a high school, even better with a degree, university degree, even better if with a doctorate. Why? Simply because they are better paid. So the higher the number of high knowledge jobs you are able to develop in the city, the higher will be the payroll they will get. Okay, and that means the higher will be the quality of life. When I became mayor, the level of unemployment was over 10%. That in Italy at that time, for a city in the northern part of Italy, was quite high. We supported the growth of existing companies. I make an example. Grandi Motori Trieste, which now is Wärtsilä, had a problem. They built these enormous engines. These are engines in which you can enter a cylinder. So the cylinder is big, more than 1 meter. So the engine are high 5-6 meters, and the weight is 300-400 tons. So they weren't able to bring the engines to the harbor because there were a bridge that didn't support this weight. So we changed. We built a new bridge. We reinforced another one in order to allow Grandi Motori to bring the entire engines to the harbor. Previously, they built it. They made a test. So switched on, made it work for some minutes, then dismounted it, brought it to the harbor and remounted it. Huge, so a cost that were really terrible. And this is only an example. We attract quite a lot of companies. I make two examples. One was a company, Ortolan, that were building cranes for the harbors. And it was working in an internal part of the region Veneto. But they had also to dismantle the crane, bring it in small pieces to the harbor, and then mount it again. And again, they had huge costs. So we said, why don't you come in Trieste? We have a place which is just beside the harbor. So you build your cranes, and when they are completed, you just move them a few tens of meters, and they go on the ship, and you ship it to the final harbor. Done. He came immediately. Another example, we saved the steel company, the Ferriera di Servola, and so it was producing steel, and we attracted a company producing tubes for water pipelines. And so the liquid steel was brought with a railway. It is only 2 kilometers distance with special wagons. And then steel liquid, the tubes were produced by this other company. The Arsenale San Marco was bought by a company that built this new manufacturing of the pipes and resold other parts of the area, for example, to a company that is building small ships and parts of the ships of Fincantieri, or the cruise ships that are manufactured in Monfalcone. So they produce the part in aluminum. They have a special technology, this company called the Cartubi, and they are able to yielding steel and aluminum, which you would say it's impossible to yield. They are able to do it. And so they are, let's say, supplier of Fincantieri, but they also produce their own ships. For example, they made a ship for delivering gas, liquid gas. So we attracted, but we also facilitated the, let's say, incorporation of new companies, mainly as a result of the scientific research. And we have some very good examples. One developed and is now listed at the stock exchange, and they are making maintenance for all the machines used in the healthcare system, in the hospitals. And they are working not only in Italy, also abroad. It became really an important company. It has been incorporated in this year. And talking about about listing, we transformed the company that distributed at that time only water, gas, and electricity. We added the waste service. We added cleaning the roads and lighting, illuminating the roads, all the services that are, let's say, economically manageable. And then we listed this company to the stock exchange in Milan. Now the company, Acegas APS, is part of the ERA group, which is one of the biggest group for multi-utility in Italy, with sales of now, I think, 4 or 5 billion euros. It's really a huge company. But going to the stock exchange, we got about, if I remember well, 60 million euros that the municipality could reinvest in buildings, schools, roads, and so on. So we had quite a lot of money. And then the company, well managed, produces profits. And so every year, the municipality of Trieste got some dividends from Acegas. And I have to say, my successor were very able. He made a merge with a similar company of the city of Padova. So it became Acegas APS. And then the two went in the group HERA. So I told you, after 8 years, the unemployment rate was reduced from 10.2% to about 5.4%, almost 1/2. So it worked. And what is more important, we didn't got any social problem, because when a person is unemployed, the first thing he comes to the municipality knocking for aids, for money, for subsidies, and what else. And so we avoided this big risk, but what is more important, we contributed in improving the quality of life of the citizens. Last point. The law in Italy foresees that as a mayor, you can have only 2 terms consecutive. Then you cannot have a third term. But you can start again after another mayor has covered the position. So you can have more than 2 terms, but not consecutive. And they often ask me, what do you think about this limit? And I always said, I think it's good, both for the territory, city or region, but also for the person, because otherwise you get in a kind of cage of your role. And it is almost impossible if you can be re-elected third, fourth, fifth time, it's almost impossible to escape your cage. So it is also for the freedom of the mayors that the limit should be maintained. But in my experience, that by chance lasted 15 years, also this in politics, I met the mayor of Barcelona and the president of the region Catalonia of that time, Jordi Pujol. I remember the name of the president and not the name of the mayor, who was a doctor. They both covered the position for 20 years. And if you ask me which is the best city, the most beautiful, the better organized city in Europe, I would answer Barcelona. They made in every square an underground parking. Every square. It's a wonderful city on the sea, like Rijeka and Trieste, really well managed. The roads, the parking, the public transportation with underground transportation is really excellent. So I was wondering, continuity is also a value. And how can you put together the two elements? One, continuity, but in the other hand, the limit of the terms. The limit, the continuity can be guaranteed even by other person. If you are doing the right things, who is coming after you will follow your path. And this by chance happened. After myself in 2001 was elected Roberto Di Piazza, who is also at present the mayor of Trieste. He was supported by a center-right coalition. So many people thought he will change everything because it is another color of the coalition. He didn't. He is also an entrepreneur, or used to be an entrepreneur in the sector of the commerce, and not only continued developing, for example, tourism. Now I would say the city of Trieste is really flowering in tourism, but also in the relationship with the other linguistic communities that previously had a really a negative relationship with the center-right coalition. For example, the Slovenian community that is protected by the law, national and regional law in Trieste, were really badly treated by the center-right previously. But Mr. Di Piazza said, no, I want to be in friendship with the mayors of the other municipalities that normally are members of the Slovenian community. And he continued in developing better and better relationship in the city and also in the other municipalities surrounding the city. So I think that we are lucky in Trieste because this doesn't happen always, that we got the continuity even if we had a change in the color of the government of the city. And I will stop with this point. I hope that Mr. Mayor will have the possibility to inspire with some of the ideas of the things we did in the past. And I'm ready to answer your question.
Evo, najljepša hvala. Hvala vam. Evo, ovo je zaista bilo jedno vrlo zanimljivo, inspirativno predavanje. Evo, vaše bogato iskustvo svakako će nam omogućiti da uočimo možda neke nove mogućnosti i svakako djeluje poticajno i motivirajuće, možda čak i u nekim izborima koji stoje pred nama i koje tek trebamo napraviti. Evo ga, a sad je došao red na vas, dragi moji. Svi koji biste željeli uputiti neko pitanje našim gostima ili komentar, ja s mikrofonom dolazim k vama i slobodni ste. Evo, stižem. Da su otvoreni. Samo malo da provjerimo tehniku, jer rade mikrofoni. Evo ga. Evo sad rade. Evo, gospodine. Izvolite.
Dobar dan. Italian or Croatian, English? Aha, na hrvatskom. Ok. Izvanredno predavanje, ali možda na engleskom okrenemo. Okay, that was a fantastic, really success that you've got with Trieste, because I used to work with Danieli at that period of time, and I remember Trieste is very dormant and probably the oldest city in Europe at that period of time, with the difference what is Trieste today. Today is a very vibrant, very, very dynamic city, and it's incredible city, and probably in these 25 years, everything happened. So my question is, you have mentioned and also cited Peter Drucker and Michael Porter, which are, of course, I would say, the paramounts of management. And the question is whether you have been educated with the knowledge and the whatever they have been teaching us in the past before you came on the mayor position, or this is what you have been learning through your major, because that is the pure management knowledge that you could implement at that period of time in order to transform Trieste in what is it today, you know? Okay, thank you.
Izvolite.
Thank you. Excellent question. Does it work? Can you hear? Yes. So I would answer, I had the chance of knowing Peter Drucker thanks to my father. When I arrived in the company in 1977, after a few months, he rent me, didn't, let's say, give it, but he said, you will give it back to me after you read it, because he was really close to this book. He want to get rid of this book. And so I read it. I was 22, 23 years old. And at that time, I was working and I was following the economy. I gave 5 examinations working, between also the 2 examination on accounting, which are tough if you can follow the lesson. But then I understood after reading Peter Drucker's books, because I read other later, and after following a course on strategic marketing, that I needed other kind of knowledge, not exactly the one I would get at the university. So I prefer to follow courses, and then during the courses you always get some name of good authors, and then reading books. And the big advantage you have in this case is that you can learn and immediately apply, and then you will remember what you learned long life. If you don't apply, it's difficult to remember the theory. If you put in practice the theory, you will remember forever. And you cited Michael Porter again. It was really my, I would say, my light for strategy. I redesigned and imitated the strategy of Illy Caffè. His principle. He said you have 4 basic. One is low cost, the other is innovation, Then you have focusing. But after focusing, you have to or follow low cost or differentiation. After reading this book, which is Competitive Advantage by Michael Porter, I was wondering and I said, we have to focus on the espresso and differentiate on quality. And we just applied this. So I could never forget the 4 basic strategies because I applied them. And this is only an example. But I will complete the answer saying, I never stopped learning. I never stopped reading. And always with the advantage of reading and applying the day after in the reality.
Evo, hvala lijepa. Evo, izvolite, stižem sada.
Hi, I have just like a short review of everything what you said. I got a feeling in one sentence that you were running the city like a company, which means that you take all the SWOT analysis and everything what is needed and then try to make it as successful as possible. Not because you never mentioned any other political nothing, everything was just straight business, but business from the side of the citizens, and this is it. Let's say this was the question, the answer. If I right or wrong, you will say. Thank you.
You are mostly right. And I can tell you, after 1 or 2 years, we were managing the municipality. The managers were calling the municipality with us, the members of the board and the mayor, the common company. Just to say that the idea, the principle, were passed to the managers. And for example, totally digitalized the municipality. When we arrived, only the demographic services had a computer. So you went to the offices and you got your certificate printed and elaborated by a computer. All the rest was on paper. In few months, we built a LAN, local area network, with 1,500 computers hang on the LAN, and the LAN was built by the employees of the municipality. It costed almost nothing. If we would go to a private company, it would cost a huge amount of money. We did it in few months with a low cost, and also people that were, for example, my secretary, that was close to pension, to retirement, and that used paper and pencil for 40 years. She made the courses and changed and adopted the computer. No problem. So to say that when you use the principles of managing a good organization as you normally do in a private company, and you use the same principles in a public administration, it works. Then there are also some, not so many, but some additional complexity. In a public administration, you need more people that give you the authorization of accomplish what you are proposing. But also in a company, you have the board of directors, you have the assembly, you have the shareholders, you have the committee of the workers, you have the unions. So it's not so simple. When I hear some colleague, entrepreneur saying, in a company, I just decide and then you think to do so. It's not right. If you don't persuade your organization that what you are proposing to do, that your decision is right, probably it won't be a company. So in the public administration, there are some more elements, some more parts of the organization that have to give an authorization. You have the city council, you have the parties, you have the board, but it's appointed by you, and you can also revoke the alderman. So probably the board will be always in agreement with you, or almost, let's say. You have to pay attention on this. Again, I cite Peter Drucker. He said, be aware of the quick and unanimous decision. Normally, they are wrong. You need a discussion. You need to go deep in details when you take an important decision. So if you don't have a discussion, you have to appoint one person to start this, to be the devil lawyer that will contrast and will oppose the decision you are proposing. And then you will have a real discussion. And finally, if the decision is right, you will take a good decision. Of course, in public administration, the shareholders are the citizens. You normally, in a company, you have a certain number of shareholders, sometimes only one, if it is a privately owned company. In the city of Trieste, you have 200,000 shareholders. And where is the problem? The big problem is that these shareholders are both benefiting of the services, but they are also paying the services. So they are shareholders and customers. That's the problem, to satisfy people that are at the same time owners and customers. And then there are the parties. But I told you, I wrote by myself with my computer the program, and it was quite detailed. And I can tell you, I had many times, many occasions in which I had to take the program, call the representative of the party, saying, what is written here? Ah, you're right. So you said in the city council you won't do it. It's written here. You are able to change your mind, but I am able to change my mind. So if you change your, I resign and we all go at home and we go to other election. And this never happened. But you can do this, have the freedom of doing this. If you are feared to lose your position, you will become the let's say you will be completely controlled by the parties, by your majority, the victim of your shareholders, of your parties, okay? So it's important always to have an alternative. And in 15 years, I always said, the day in which I won't be re-elected, I go back full-time making the entrepreneur, because in the meantime, I passed from manager to entrepreneur. And all the politicians told me, no, it's impossible. You will never do it. Now you are in politics, you will stay here for lifelong. The day in which I lost the election in 2008, I resigned. I could be regional councillor for 5 years. I resigned and went back the entrepreneur full time.
Hvala lijepa, evo.
Buonasera signori, sono Afrodita Spina, buonasera. Volevo chiederla, visto che parlava di management e di gestione in settore pubblico, volevo sapere cosa l'ha gratificata di più, gestire un'azienda privata o lavorare in un settore pubblico. Rifarebbe sindaco. E volevo chiedere al nostro sindaco e il console, possiamo sperare in un futuro breve, in un treno diretto Fiume Trieste o Trieste Fiume? Grazie.
Hvala vam. Pitanje za vas, gradonačelniče, da li ćemo u skorije vrijeme imati vlak Trst-Rijeka, isto tako za vas isto pitanje, pa krenimo redom, izvolite.
So I start. What gave you more satisfaction? It's difficult to say, but I would say something related to the social aspect. And I again cite the concept of influence. The mayor is responsible for children that has no parents. So, for example, when migrants arrive and they do not have 18 years, they will be put under the responsibility of the mayor of the city where they arrive. So this happened several times. And of course, they are then controlled and followed by the social services. But what happened one day, a quite young lady that has a child of 8 years, if I remember well, had an illness and died. She was alone. She had no boyfriend, no husband, no nothing. And he had only two guys, a couple, that were excellent friends. They were almost living together, even if in two different apartments, but very close. The problem was that they were blind. And the Italian law says that a child cannot be adopted by a couple of blind people. So I had the responsibility of this boy, and I thought wouldn't be good for him being followed only by the social services for 10 years. I thought I went and met the two people, the two blind persons. I understood that they were absolutely ready to follow the boy. I saw that the boy had a strong relationship with them. And so I went to the president of the court of the minors and talked to her, explained the situation, and convinced her to make an exception. And so finally, the boy was adopted by the blind guys couple. And he lived pretty well, I would say. Then when I left my position of mayor, I left the relationship with him, so I don't know now what he's doing, but I'm pretty sure that he is doing well.
Hvala lijepa. Evo i sad nastavak za vas, gospodine.
The other question is if I make again the mayor. Yes, I think it's better not to return on the place of crime. So I would avoid.
Evo, izvolite. Hoćete i vi?
The question was about the train connection between Rijeka and Trieste. Mogu hrvatskom, ne. U tom kontekstu ja znam da je Trst svega 68 km od Rijeke, da je bilo normalno da vlakom koji vozi u svakoj prosječnoj zapadnoevropskoj zemlji budemo tamo za pola sata. Ne? To je potpuno normalno. Ja nekako u svim svojim nastupima koji se povezanosti Rijeke sa, u ovom slučaju, susjednim gradovima, prijateljskim gradovima, mi sa Trstom imamo potpisani sporazum o prijateljskoj istu. Praktički smo pobratimljeni gradovi. Mislim da sav europski novac bi se trebao uložiti u željeznice. Mi nismo se povezali, neki dan smo slavili u Vijećnici 170 godina željezničke veze Rijeke sa Budimpeštom ili Rijeke s Karlovcem, pa kasnije Zagreb Budimpeštom. Ili s ove...
Ja vas molim za malo pristojnosti.
Ili s ove...
Ne. Gospodin gradonačelnik je dobio legitimno pitanje i ima potpuno pravo i na odgovor.
Ili ove strane Ljubljanom. Mislim da je prvenstveno ono čemu se trebamo posvetiti autocestovna veza. Znači definitivno treba tu slomiti taj slovenski otpor koji definitivno postoji i gdje svega fali 30 kilometara od Rupe do Postojne, a kasnije veze sa europskim autocestama, a kasnije pristupiti ovoj željezničkoj vezi. Pazite, u Sloveniji su i vlade padale od povezanosti Kopra sa unutrašnjošću, ali definitivno jača veza ne sad samo Trsta i Rijeke, nego i Kopra, a oni surađuju zajedno s Venecijom kroz ovu inicijativu sjeverno-jadranskih luka, je nešto što nam treba, ali definitivno mislim da i u Zagrebu možemo biti za svega sat vremena sa željeznicom, ali pitanje je da li uopće u Europi postoje tvrtke koje to mogu izvesti i projektirati i izvesti. Vi znate da su natječaji padali, da sad ne idem u detalje, svi ste s tim upoznati, ali definitivno ta konekcija između Rijeke i Trsta bi trebala biti bolja.
Evo, da li možda, hvala lijepa, gradonačelniče, da li bi možda generalni, ja vas lijepo molim da nam dozvolite da nastavimo u jednom prijateljskom i kulturnom tonu ovo naše druženje večerašnje. Hvala lijepa. Evo, pitanje je bilo nastavak, da li, što i vi mislite vezano za vlak Rijeka-Trst, kako bi to, koje benefite bi donijelo za jednu i drugu, u stvari, zemlju, prijateljske gradove. Izvolite.
Okay, I will answer in English because
Okay,
I
it's
have
okay.
trouble understanding your question. Answering would be
Okay.
complicated. But just to say that I think we, in the current real crisis-ridden period, starting from the COVID-19 crisis and then, unfortunately, what has been happening in the international sphere over the coming last few years, we have learned a couple of things. First thing is that there is a stronger relationship between countries that are geographically close. If a company invests in another continent, 10,000 kilometers from where headquarters are, anything can happen. There's the Suez Canal, Panama Canal, another epidemic, wars, and companies are learning this, are learning benefits of investing. And politics is increasingly aware of this. And relationships between countries that are close by are benefit. Italy, Croatia, Italy, Slovenia. This is to say that there needs to be political support, obviously, kind of solution. It doesn't come just natural. And this, I think, the time is which politicians and political institutions are becoming aware of this necessity. And of course, we have to speak as well with our Slovenian friends, obviously, because it doesn't depend on Rijeka and Trieste. Second point, again, emphasizing the need for political discussion on this. Personal anecdote, I remember a few years ago, many years ago, I was, I think, 18 or 19, I took from and Croatia was not in the European Union. Mm-hmm. And it was, you could just take the train and go to Zagreb. Now that Croatia is in the European Union, it's not possible anymore. And it hasn't been possible for many years. So often we tend, two countries are fortunately both in the European Union, we tend to delegate these solutions to the supranational level, Brussels discussions taking on there, which have an important role. But bilateral relations and between local municipalities and regions have a very important role.
Hvala lijepa, nadamo se svi mi skupa i s jedne i s druge strane da će i to jednom prilikom u što skorije vrijeme doći na red. Da li još možda netko želi postaviti pitanje? Izvolite.
Hi. Who are some of the other people you would add to the ones you already said? You would add to the list of actually worth reading and reviewing in the business world? Grazie.
Hvala.
Thank you for the question. I could read a very, very long list of authors that help me in taking the right decision. It's too long now to just make a list of names, but I can suggest a method. Normally, when you read a book, you will read also other author mentioned in it. What I normally did is I tried to go to the origins. So if I found an idea, a principle, a description of something, and the author is cited, I buy the book of the original author and I read this one. Of course, in management, you have several fields. You have marketing, you have strategy, you have production or manufacturing, you have accounting, you have the controlling, financing, and so on. So for each of these fields, I could cite some names. So it depends also on the field in which you want to develop your managerial or entrepreneurial career. Because if you say, I won't be in manufacturing, I would say, okay, you have to understand what total quality means. And I could say, read the book of Mr. Edward Deming. Deming was an American that developed the principle of total quality in Japan. And so the main company applying his principles is Toyota. And by the way, is making pretty well. Is the first or second group worldwide competing with Volkswagen in the automotive sector. Another book that really signed my professional life in terms of branding is a book by Al Ries and Jack Trout. The title is Positioning. There are so simple and clear principles in the book that you can't be in agreement with them and you can't apply them. For example, this guy wrote that our mind has no place for thousands and thousands of brands. And if you want to find a place in the brain of your customers, of your consumers, you have to relate to the brand only one product. This was the reason because I got rid of the tea that I found in 1977 at Illy Cafe, and it was called Illy's Tea. After I read this book, I said, okay, get rid of tea. The sales were small. It was only bringing, let's say, confusion, and didn't allow us to focus the brand Illy on coffee. After 30 years, we acquired a tea company. The brand is Daman Frère, and it is more easy to remember one brand for coffee and one for tea than remembering one brand that pretend to be good for many products. But in all the books I cited, I found other authors. So if you also only take some of the book I cited today, you will find many other name of author and read them, and you will complete your training, let's say. But then never stop reading, because they continue to print new books, and some of them are very interesting.
Može jedan aplauz, jer stvarno Ja predlažem, ne znam ako se gosti slažu, da li su već možda pomalo, neću reći umorni, ali žedni. Hoćemo li nastaviti dalje, možda s još nekim pitanjem? Evo, izvolite.
Thank you. So thank you very much for this presentation of success of Trieste, which we really are very aware here in Rijeka, and we are very often go to Trieste at least for a coffee because you have very good coffee. And yes, I agree also with colleagues. I also understand your presentation as your managed Trieste as a city, as a company, and that was really very plastic description of your strategy and all managerial process which you applied. But I think that what is very important here is that obviously you had a vision for the city. You have a vision and you had your own leadership, because without your leadership you couldn't attract people who were experts in the professions and who actually manage and help you in manage this city and actually execute this strategy, because execution is what is important. So my question is, how you succeed to attract these people to come to public sector? Because usually people who are expert and very successful in their profession, they usually work in very successful companies. They don't want, or they don't have time, or they don't want to switch and to work in the public sector. So what was actually your trick for attract them? Thank you.
Thank you. I would say one part of the answer you already gave. It's the vision. If the vision is able to commit other people, and you are able to tell your vision being really convincing, you can get people ready also to abandon their present job to follow you. But the second element, I think, was the perception of being part of a unique project. Because what we shared with all the other members of the board, with the eldermen, was the feeling that the potential of Trieste was much, much higher than it was exploited at this moment, up to now. And secondly, that we could, working in the proper way in this unique environment, being the sole fully independent and fully professional, to accomplish of exploiting the potential of the city. So normally human beings are attracted by what is unique. So if you have to choose a jacket and you know that have been produced and in the whole world, you will be more attracted from it if rather than produce of thousands. So the uniqueness of a project, of a things, is something really attractive, and it worked.
Hvala lijepa. Želi li možda još ne? Izvolite.
Thank you. So thank you for your time and for dedicating this to our city. I would say that you led across different kind of environments, government and enterprise with your organizational principles, but something that may differentiate in, let's say, company environment are the values that start when the company is made. And in a government environment, I think that you probably bring those values actually. So my question is, what are the values that drove you to accomplish all that you did? And another thing is, Has this methodology that you applied in Trieste been used in any other city? Thank you.
Izvolite.
So it's easy to answer the second question. I would say yes, it is possible to methods, these principles also in other, not only cities, but let's say public administration in a broader way. Why not also for governing a whole state or a region, not only a municipality? The values are, I agree, very important, and they are part of the culture of an organization. And this culture is built after years and decades in each organization. So when you arrive in an organization that exists since centuries, like was the municipality of Trieste, you have first of all to respect the values that you find, the culture that you find. If you pretend to change everything immediately, it won't work. They will simply refuse you. They will push you back, and you will fail for sure. So respect is, I would say, the most important value you have to adopt and to spread in an organization, especially when it exists since a long time. And then I would say integrity. You have to be always clear, really to think and to do what you say. Even when you have to say something which is negative, even if you have to say a critic about one of your employees or managers or eldermen, whatever. So you have to be clear. And then you have to really do what you said. Sometimes I did it and it costed to me. I remember once we had to contribute appointing the new president of the Port Authority. And the president of the region at that time, I was mayor, and so I had a voice in this appointment. And the president of the region was a person, we were good friends when we were young. So I knew him very, very well. And he came to me saying, we have this name. Can you tell me if you are in agreement or not? I say, okay, not in this moment. Leave me some time. Tomorrow I will call you and say if it's okay or not. I called the consultant because he was living in Genoa, and this president of the Port Authority was a professor in Genoa, a citizen of Genoa. So I called him and he said, yes, it's a competent, it's a good person. I think you can say, okay. So I said, okay, to the president of the region. And few days later, I learned the rector of the university that this guy was very strongly related with another politician of the other coalition. But I gave my word and I maintain it. I don't know if for the city and for the harbor, finally it was the right decision or not. But I thought I had to maintain my integrity, and so I said yes and should remain yes.
Hvala gospodinu Iliju. I evo možda još netko. Znači sve je rečeno. Hvala lijepa s ovim posljednjim pitanjem i odgovor. A ima još jedno. Evo na brzinu, evo još i vi. Iako smo već skoro zaključili, dođite mi ovdje. Odite da vas vidi gospodin, jer se već ljudi ovdje pomalo dižu. Izvolite.
Hello. Thank you very much, Mr. Illy, for coming here, sharing your vast experience and knowledge of leading successful city. In these final moments, I would like to ask you kind of simple question, but maybe the answer is much complex, but I'm sure with your expertise, you will find a way. My first question is, what do you consider as the most challenging aspect of bringing Trieste to the spot where it is now? Especially considering these issues of combining, this is one of the things I'm going to take home for sure, what you mentioned, the combination of competence and influence. That's very strong point, one of the strong points. So what is the most challenging aspect of your experience of leading Trieste? And also, what do you consider your best or biggest accomplishment, and why is that so? Thank you.
I would answer the two questions the same answer. The most challenging aspect was to create good relationships between the different linguistic, cultural, and also religion components of the city. There is a law of cybernetic. It's the law of necessary complexity, something similar. It's a law by Mr. Ashby, if I remember well, the Ross Ashby, something similar, saying that if you have diversities in a community, you will get better results rather than with an homogeneous environment, with an homogeneous population. You see in scientific research, almost all the scientific institutions are building groups for research where you have people talking different languages, coming from different countries, with different religions, and so on, different cultures, and they are normally more creative. So when I became mayor, also because myself, I belong to a minority, a religion minority. I am a Protestant, not a Catholic, and there are very few Protestants in Italy. I do not profess now my religion, but I have been educated as a Protestant. And so I thought the big challenge is exactly this one, to let the different components of the community of Trieste not only to respect, but to work together, because only work together they will produce the best results, the maximum level of creativity. Imagine that after my first election in 1993, December the 6th, they invited me at the national vision, but the regional program, so RAI 3, and they asked me to say something. And I said, grazie, and then I said, fa la liepa. And the center right, it was it was something terrible, I said. I said, it's absolutely normal. % of the population, which is Slovene, why shouldn't I say thank you also in Slovene? And by the way, the Slovenian then told me, but you said liepa instead of lepa, so it's more what? Rather than any case. So I criticized the parties. But finally, it worked. And by the way, I elaborated also a theory, which is living together, maintaining the differences, but any case integrated. I call it conservative integration. And the integration is related mainly with religious and cultural association. So we have the Greek Orthodox, and they speak Greek. We have the Serb Orthodox, and of course, they speak Serb. We have the Slovenian community. They are protected by the law, so they have schools. It's easier for them. But when children born in Trieste, they will probably learn the culture, the language, the religion of their parents. So we observe the difference over the generation. And this means that richness represented by the differences will be maintained also in the future. And I think that this was the most important result. It's very different to be measured. And one of the principles of Mr. Deming is that there are no results, no accomplishment if they cannot be measured. And in this case, I have to admit, it's very different to measure this. But if you come to Trieste, you just walk in the city and you will hear people talking in different languages, and you go to the churches and you see that they are professing their religion in their church with their language and so on, you will understand that we really accomplished this objective.
Evo, hvala, ovo je bio odličan punchline i mi u Rijeci isto tako njegujemo multikulturalnost. Ja bih sad zamolila za gospodina Popovića jedan komentar na sve ovo što je danas večeras u stvari rečeno, a zaista sjajnih je bilo i izjava i primjera dobre prakse od kojih možemo i mi kao zajednica mnogo toga naučiti.
Evo ja bi, gospodin Illy me inspirirao. You inspired me very much. And I remember in this moment, sentence of Ford, he say, like you said, coming together is start, staying together is progress, but working together is success. And this is what we have to learn, working together. And this is everything.
Odlično, odlično. Hvala lijepa. Ja bih zamolila gradonačelnika isto tako za jednu onako kratak jedan komentar i osvrt na današnji dan. Evo, izvolite.
It was very inspiring to hear what former mayor said, and we can all learn from that, and I hope that we will all together use it in development of Rijeka in next years. I mean, it's as I said at the beginning, very hard to maintain all the interest in the society, and this is the when you said that this was the biggest achievement of your mandate, to really work with everybody regardless of their religious beliefs and so on. And I think maybe the best similarity between Trieste and Rijeka, because in Rijeka there is also a huge influence of a lot of minorities, especially Italian minority, which was present here for many, many years, and also others. I had a meeting yesterday with all the representatives elected in the election for the minorities, and 11% of our people here in Rijeka are from some minorities.
Console, per concludere questa serata, prego.
So, thank you very much, and likewise, very much inspired by what Ricardo Illy was saying. I would like to thank him once again for taking his time to be here with us today in Rijeka. First comment, the treasuring national religion, cultural minorities, I cannot but fully agree with the mayor. In Rijeka, there is a very strong Italian national community, as well as many other communities, and Rijeka is in full line with what was saying former Mayor Illy, and Trieste and Rijeka are together in this and share a common history. Second point, Trieste and Rijeka deserve to work more closely together, and I hope this can be done also with the current mayor of Trieste. There is an interest to work together. The two cities have so much in common that they deserve and need to speak to each other and cooperate on so many levels, and I'm sure that with political support this can be achieved. So thank you once again for this evening together.
Hvala lijepa. Evo, Hvala svima A, eko. A, izvoli. Odlično. Evo, sjajan završetak večeri, a ja pozivam vas sad na druženje ovdje ispred aule. Hvala lijepa.